Hello from Toronto. My name is John Keogh, and welcome to the Future of Food 10 by 10 Expert Series. In this series, I talk with 10 experts on different aspects of the food chain, and more specifically, I'm going to ask them about the key challenges and the key opportunities. And today, I'm delighted to have with me Barbara Bray from the UK. Hello, Barbara.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me on.
Barbara, I'm delighted to have you, and the time goes very, very quickly, the 10 minutes that we have together. So in the first minute, can you tell a little bit about who you are and what you do?
So I'm a food safety and nutrition consultant. I'm based in Manchester in the UK, the cold and wet north. I actually grew up in the north of England. I'm not a Londoner. And in terms of food, it's something that's always been part of my schooling, so all the way through my education and my job. So being a food technologist initially, working with companies from the fresh produce sector and ready meals, and then specialising in nutrition slightly later in life. And I'm very passionate about food, and when I'm not working with food companies, I like to spend my time open water swimming.
Wonderful. Now, before I get on to my very first question, I also want to ask you about your Queen's Award. You were singled out as one of those few people in Britain that got the Queen's Award. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It was a real surprise. It was not long after I'd done my Nuffield Farming Scholarship, and I received a letter in the post from the Cabinet Office, and I thought, what's this? I never get letters from HMRC, the tax people, twice a year or once a year, whatever. So it was a real surprise. And when I opened it, it was a nomination for an MBE, and I'd actually been nominated by DEFRA. So that was, I was really flattered because, when you're doing your day job and you're working with people and doing voluntary work, you just think that you're doing the do. You don't think anyone's actually watching. So to have somebody nominate me for my services to food nutrition, I was very touched and incredibly humbled. It just makes you think, I need to now work even harder. So it was a real privilege to go to Buckingham Palace and collect my medal from Princess Anne, who is my all-time favourite royal. So it was just the best day ever.
Well, congratulations on that. I believe that Chivalry Award dates back to King George V in 1916 or 1917, or around that time. So congratulations on that. Now let's get into it quickly, Barbara. Based on your experience then in the food industry, what do you see as the key challenges that they're dealing with?
I think the kind of three things that I want to focus on. So at the moment, and really from the beginning of the year, or rather since we were worried about Brexit, labour has been an issue. And it's not just labour from the point of view of having people who are low paid picking our crops and so on and so forth. I think having the right skills in the food industry is increasingly becoming an issue, because it's not a place that's attractive to young people coming through the system. You have people who are older than me starting to retire and taking a lot of that knowledge with them, and there's not the pipeline of skills coming back through. The second thing I want to highlight is food prices. So the price of raw materials, I think, can be an issue coming up because we're seeing climate change issues with crops. The UK has just announced that the wheat crop is down 30%. And as we leave the EU and start to negotiate trade deals, I wonder whether we're able to have the same capacity to import as we could do with the same prices. So that will also be an issue. And energy, I think the way that we manufacture our foods, have we really looked at the energy that we're using and challenged ourselves to say, can we do a better job with energy efficiency, looking at food waste, what we're throwing out? Obviously, there's been energy put into producing that food, and if it ends up in the bin, then it's all wasted. So I'd say there are three challenges that I think we should really focus on.
Gotcha. And now flipping those challenges into the opportunities, what do you see as the key opportunity? Now, some of those challenges, of course, may become opportunities, but what would you say are the key ones that the food industry really needs to focus on right now?
One thing that's been highlighted with Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, not being very well with COVID-19, it's about our health of the nation. And I think as food manufacturers, we need to look and see what added nutritional benefit we can bring. So it's very easy for Public Health England to tell us to take out salt, sugar, sat, fat, so on and so forth. But what do we add? Can we add more fibre? Can we add more vegetables? Another thing I noticed during the COVID-19 period was the inflexibility of the supply chain. It was either food service or retail. Are there ways that we can bring those two together and repurpose food better? So it might not necessarily be as efficient overall, but it means that we've got better flexibility. So when we need to flex it, we can. And I think another opportunity is artificial intelligence. You see other industries embracing AI and looking for opportunities. And I just wonder whether the food industry hasn't taken advantage of that, whether that's in the production side or whether it's in the technical field, like where I'm at, going out and doing audits and trying to work with people and using the best of technology to exchange information and make sure that we can use it in the best way we can.
Gotcha. Now, I want to circle back to the challenges that you mentioned. You mentioned labor and skills, pricing of raw materials, and energy consumption. On the pricing of the raw materials, do you think that if there's a shortage of raw materials, that will cause a few things? It could cause food fraud, or it could cause a reduction in the quality of products that are actually, or ingredients that are used in products. Are there risks tied up in that?
Definitely. One thing I noticed over the pandemic, and it's not necessarily an issue, is that the quality of things seemed to decrease. People were more accepting of the fact that, I've gone in to buy some vegetables, whether it looks right or it doesn't. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the lot and pick out what I need. And it was almost like there was an acceptance. It was okay to have lower quality. I think it's a shame to lose that. We had the whole piece around ugly fruit and vegetables, and I think it's important not to waste food. And the beginning of lockdown, we were very good at not wasting food. Sadly, the RAP figures show that we've got a bit more cavalier with our attitude. With food fraud, again, I think there are so many opportunities for food fraud, because when people are desperate, they're asking fewer questions. It's a case of, I put in an order, the supplier couldn't do it, I've gone somewhere else, they say they've got the certification, let's bring it in. And we already had issues with spices, with olive oils, with ingredients coming in. And I always say to people, if somebody, it's a bit like calling a plumber, plumbers are in really short supply in the UK at the moment. So if you ring one and they say, I'm coming tomorrow, that's not a plumber that you want in your home. And it's the same with food issues. If somebody says, oh yes, I can definitely supply that, but there's a shortage, you know that something's either been changed or altered, that the specification isn't right, or the quality isn't right, or from a food safety, it isn't right.
Yeah, that are great points that you bring up there, Barbara, for sure. Now, in the area again of opportunities, you talked about repurposing food, of course, and reducing waste. And I often thought that supermarkets should never throw away food; they should offer it to customers. But do you think that there's an opportunity for supermarkets even to mix drinks? Make drinks from fruit and vegetables within the store, and even give them away to customers, or sell them if they're still good, but at least give them away. You use them, but never throw away veggies or fruit. Is there an opportunity there?
Definitely. And when I was in Shanghai doing my research for my Nuffield farming project, I saw just that, juice stations. So it meant that supermarkets weren't necessarily having to buy in fresh fruit and vegetables specifically for the juice station. They could take what was already on the shelf and repurpose that. And I think there's probably room for a third avenue. So we have restaurants and cafes where people who've got enough money can go and spend, and we have charities where they're doing food banks and food. But I think if we had community centres that were selling food, they could probably take food that was repurposed from factories or from supermarkets that couldn't be sold, not because it's inedible, but it just isn't going to be sold in time, and have that free. And then they're selling that at a cheap price so that people can have a nutritious meal. But it's not necessarily an out-and-out commercial enterprise. It can be subsidised so that people who don't have enough money can have a place to eat a healthy meal. So I think your idea of using what's there and repurposing it in any way, whether it's in a supermarket or whether it's in a community centre or whether it goes to charity, is so important so we don't waste food.
Gotcha. Now you mentioned AI as well, Barbara, and AI, that reminded me of a chapter that I just wrote, which was on Society 5.0. Now you have Industry 5.0, which is the technology push to the market, and you have Society 5.0, which Japan is driving very strongly, and that's really pulling. So in context of of Society 5.0, you try to focus on the future consumer and the consumer needs. In Canada, we're looking at how do we get the outputs, how do we use technology to get the outcomes from our health and feed them back into the food system so that we make safer, more nutritious products. Do you see that as important?
Definitely, and we're starting to see in the personalised nutrition space how people are using that technology. So, for example, taking swabs, sending it off to a company to test for your DNA, and they give you advice on what products you should be avoiding, whether it's salt, saturated fat, or sugar. And I think personalised nutrition advice is the way forward. Our government might not necessarily want to pay for it in that way. They might still want to push out blanket population level advice, but within our population, we have young children, we've got nursing mothers, we've got the elderly. Having a one-size-fits-all nutrition advice isn't working, and we need to look at how, even if we can't go straight to personalisation, we can go to customisation, and that will reduce food waste if we're able to tailor diets to a particular population group so that they know that that's what works for them and not having to just eat whatever's available. And it will save time, energy, and money.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point you mentioned. Last year, I remember watching or reading a study. The University of Toronto was involved in the study, and it was 12 countries. I think the researchers were leading it out of Australia, but Canada, quite surprisingly, had the highest sodium levels in packaged foods of 12 countries checked, even higher than the US. It was quite surprising to see that.
I'm
Hence,
surprised.
yes, of course. So there's a stronger focus now on taking those health outcomes, feeding them back into the food system, producing healthier products, more safer products, and more nutritious products, and then getting into that customized or precision nutrition, which is very important. Barbara, in the last minute or so, if you were up in front of 50 startup CEOs, what advice would you give them?
It might just be a British thing, but I think we need to do failure better. I think when we start organizations or start businesses, it's all too easy to think, well, this is how I've got a plan, and if the plan doesn't work, people are desperately unhappy and saying, oh, it failed, blah, blah, blah. I think we need to learn from our failures. We need to embrace failure, take the learnings and use that to inform our next steps, make better decisions and share best practice. And I think that's one thing where I think, looking back at my own life, yes, I've made poor decisions, but I've also done things that have turned out well. So you focus on the things that you've done well and think, great, yes, but you learn from the poor decisions that you've made and the failures, and don't let that hold you back. You use it to inform your next decision and do things better next time.
Wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, there you go. There you have it, all the way from the UK, Barbara Bray MBE, with great advice. Learn how to fail fast, but get back into the race again as quick as possible. Barbara, thank you so much for sharing this time with us today.
Thank you for having me.